While one may assume that the villain in Creed 2 would be Viktor Drago, son of Ivan Drago, that isn't entirely the case. Like his father, Viktor is unfortunately being used as a tool to further someone else's goal or plans, and in this case, Ivan's desire to get back in the good graces of Russia. There is also some parallels between both Adonis and Viktor that we also have to look at, and what makes them, as Mr. Miyagi would say, different but same. This is why Viktor Drago isn't a villain. Let's talk about the symbolism and parallels that he shares with Adonis, his fighting style, how he became who he is, and more. Let's recap on what we know about Viktor Drago so far. Feel free to skip to the next chapter to avoid the recap, but be warned, you may miss some important details later on in the video. Viktor is born in 1990, 5 years after Ivan Drago's defeat at the hands of Rocky Balboa. Not long after, his mother, Ludmila, would divorce Ivan and abandon the family, leaving Viktor to be raised solely by his father in Ukraine. After Ivan retired, he would go on to train Viktor to eventually restore honor to the Drago name and get back in the good graces of Russia after being disgraced for losing to Rocky Balboa. Living only to train and work, Viktor would go on to fight in underground clubs and amass a record of at least 23 straight victories. This would eventually catch the eyes of promoter Buddy Marcel, who would purposely try to goad Adonis Creed into fighting Viktor. Ivan would personally visit Rocky at his restaurant to issue the challenge in person, and the two Dragos would meet Adonis at the weigh-in, nearly causing a fight beforehand. Viktor is pushed even further by his father during training to win by any means necessary, even coaching Viktor to break his opponent, which Viktor successfully does in the first match due to his unreal strength, and goes on to knock Adonis while he takes a knee in the ring, earning his first loss via disqualification. Viktor would continue to rise through the ranks as the #1 contender, while publicly stating that if Adonis didn't fight him, he's not a real champion, and in denial of his loss. Viktor and Ivan are invited to a dinner party with some of Russia's elite, where the former is presented with new trunks and unfortunately sees his mother again. Viktor leaves in anger, but Ivan convinces him that he will win the title and build a future. Eventually, Adonis agrees to a rematch in Moscow, Russia, and the two begin to respectively train for this fight. However, Adonis fares better this time, having been trained by Rocky to withstand heavy blows, and takes the fight to the 10th round. Viktor succeeds in breaking Adonis' ribs again, but is surprised when he gets up, and soon gets knocked to the mat for the first time in his career. After another knockdown, Viktor loses the will to fight as he sees his mother abandoning him once again, which prompts Ivan to throw in the towel to stop the fight, and reassures his son that it was okay for him to lose. In a deleted scene, possibly right after the fight, Adonis comforts Viktor and tells him that they are not defined by one match. Now in a better relationship with his father, Viktor continues to train back in Ukraine. Let's first take a look at what made Viktor the villain, or made it seem like he was one. One of the most obvious factors is being the son of Ivan Drago, the man who killed Apollo Creed, Adonis' father. In almost a Shakespearean sort of way, Viktor and Adonis were destined to be enemies the moment they were born. Buddy Marcel took the advantage of the bad blood that Drago had with both Creed and Balboa, and used it to his advantage to goad Adonis into taking the fight so he could profit from it. This is evident in the film, as Marcel is doing all the talking in the press conferences, going so far to even approach Adonis personally while he watches Bianca perform. Although Adonis said they are parading around and talking shit, Marcel is the one doing all of the talking, as Viktor and Adonis don't even meet face to face until the weigh-in, where they have an altercation, which was started by Ivan mocking Apollo and Adonis. Notice it's also Marcel who sends the gift basket after Amara is born, again trying to persuade him to fight. Buddy plays a very similar role to George Washington Duke, trying to book a big money making championship match and doing whatever he can to get under the champion's skin, even if it means attacking them personally. Duke would go so far to steal Tommy Gunn away from Rocky when he couldn't get Balboa in the ring, and Marcel would be subtly persistent in getting Adonis to fight in Creed vs. Drago 2. The second factor that made Viktor seem like the villain are the dirty tactics he used in the ring. There are 3 notable instances that he used these tactics. The first fight being where Donnie took a knee from being attacked in the ribs again, and Viktor followed up with a right uppercut, even after being cautioned by the referee to stop twice, something he almost does again later on. The second in their rematch, where he used his right arm to hold Donnie's left arm as a hold, and struck the ribs twice. And lastly, also in the rematch, landing a huge shot after the bell rings, which Rocky protests. Regarding the one-armed clinch, looking at the WBC rules for championship bouts, there is a section that states a list of common fouls that may be committed by boxers, or seconds where the context is appropriate, that may be cause for penalty or disqualification is as follows. And 2 on the list would closely match this foul. Number 13, which is excessive holding the opponent or maintaining a clinch, or number 16, holding the opponent's head or body with one hand while hitting with the other. Ultimately, it is up to the referee to decide, but I feel that one of these would have garnered a penalty given the fact that when Viktor attacked Donnie was down violated number 11, which is hitting the opponent when he is down or getting up from the canvas. The only reason I can think of why he didn't get a penalty for this is because they were in Russia, and the ref more than likely would be favoring Viktor instead of Adonis, and would also explain why he didn't get penalized for the punch after the bell. Little Duke and Rocky even talk about this before the rematch, that Viktor has an advantage if it gets to a judge's decision. However, there is another aspect of this I would like to argue, and as always, does not defend the character's actions, but rather the reason why he did it. He didn't want to let down his father. In the first fight, Ivan tells Viktor that Adonis is afraid, and the latter agrees, but when Ivan asks why is he still standing, we see that Viktor looks at his father almost in disbelief and in somewhat of a shock. Ivan orders his son to break him, and Viktor gets up not necessarily in agreement, but does as he's asked in the second round. Before the third round, Ivan is yelling at his son that Donnie is embarrassing him and is why she left us, referring to his mother. Viktor looks shaken as he hears these words, and even flinches a bit when Ivan says that's why, once again looking at his father in disbelief of what he's saying. In the second fight, when being told to break Adonis again and to finish it, we see Viktor still giving shocked looks at what his father is being told. This is very reminiscent of Johnny being told to sweep the leg in Karate Kid, as though Johnny disliked his opponent. He knew there was a line that shouldn't have been crossed, but did so anyway. This is exactly what is happening to Viktor. He knows what he's doing isn't right, but he feels obligated to do so anyway, whatever it takes to win. This brings me to my third point, which I will also talk about in the next section, of why Viktor was made or seems to be a villain, the relationship with his family. As Rocky put it best, Viktor was raised in hate due to being abandoned by his mother and being pushed to his limits by his father. Because of being disgraced by the USSR and having to move back to Ukraine, one can assume that Ivan and Viktor were doing what they could to get by. This is somewhat seen as Viktor is seen doing manual labor by day and doing underground fighting presumably by night, in a similar parallel to Rocky's beginnings in the first film. Ivan told Rocky that all Viktor knew was how to fight, and we can see this in his underground fights and physique, being nearly unstoppable even for Adonis in their first fight. Because of all of this, we see that Viktor fights subconsciously to earn the affection of both his father and mother, the former's desire to get back in the good graces of Russia, and for the latter to stick around because she never did before. When Viktor is knocked down a second time, this is proven when he loses the will to fight after seeing his mother leaving, while his father urges him to continue. I'd also like to point out some subtle details that also point out to Viktor's ambiguity in the film. When both he and his father are at the steps in Philadelphia, we see some reluctance from Viktor as his father stares at Rocky's statue, showing that the rivalry is more so because of Ivan and not Viktor himself. It's also interesting to note that Buddy Marcel again does all the talking for both Dragos in a similar role to Ludmila and Nikolai doing the speaking for Ivan in Rocky IV. Prior to the first fight, Viktor was willing to touch gloves but Adonis wasn't, showing sportsmanship in at least that moment. Although Viktor himself is responsible for directly injuring Adonis after he was knocked down, we see that he shows somewhat of a concern for Adonis, as it was Ivan's words that made him angry in the first place to go that far. In the locker room before his second fight with Donnie, he notices Buddy Marcel taking pictures with his father, possibly suspecting that his father is being manipulated by the promoter. In some of the softer moments of the film, he's upset when the towel is thrown in and cries that he let his father down, but Ivan hugs and reassures him that everything is okay. In the last shot we see of the final cut of the film of the two, we see Ivan struggling to keep up with Viktor, in which the latter takes notice and suspects that his dad is not immortal after all. Let's primarily talk about the symbolism and the parallels between both Adonis and Viktor, and some that Viktor also shares with Rocky and his own father. Both grew up without the other half of the family they needed, Viktor without a mother and Adonis without a father. This is what drastically caused them to go down different paths in their lives. Although Donnie was first placed in group homes in juvie for the early years of his life, Marianne, Apollo's wife, would adopt Adonis and give him a proper education so he wouldn't have to fight. Viktor, on the other hand, as mentioned before, grew up in hate due to his father's bitter attitude towards his exile from Russia and would train Viktor to fight as the only way to live. As I had mentioned before, Viktor is similar to Rocky in this aspect, where he would work some kind of job during the day. In Rocky 1, it was muscle for a loan shark. In Rocky 2, it was in the meatpacking plant, and fight in the underground at night. Both Viktor and Adonis have also lost that same parent in different aspects when they were very young. Adonis losing Apollo before he was even born due to Creed's fight with Drago, and Viktor losing his mother when Ludmila walked out on the family not long after he was born. During the dinner scene, Viktor goes so far to call Ludmila a stranger and also says, "I don't even know that woman." Another similarity that the two have in common is that they have to deal with an overbearing legacy of their respective father's name, though in different ways. In the first Creed movie, Donnie struggles with wanting to bear the name of his father, as he wants to form his own legacy and not piggyback off of Apollo's. In the final fight with Ricky Conlon, he tells Rocky he wants to prove that he's not a mistake. Ultimately, even though he doesn't win the fight, he wins the respect of Ricky, the crowd, and forms his own legacy. In Creed 2, Viktor is presented with a similar problem, putting the name back in the good graces of Russia by winning the world championship, something his father could never do. Although it may be implied that Viktor is possibly surpassing his father's legacy in terms of his own skill and having the opportunity to face more world contenders than his father did, we do see him struggle with this problem, notably during the dinner with elite officials. Ivan puts more pressure on Viktor by saying, "I lost, but you won't." This struggle is also seen through Ivan's hard coaching, saying things during Viktor's inability to defeat Adonis is why she left, to break him, and so on, as I've said before. However, Ivan's love for his son prevails when Ludmila leaves the fight after Viktor gets knocked down a second time and reassures his son that it's okay that he lost, while also throwing in the towel to get the said fight stopped. This particular comparison is expanded upon in a deleted scene where Adonis and Viktor talk after the second fight, and the former explains that he understands how he feels and that Viktor is more than just one fight. Notice that when Ivan walks in, and right before, we see a wall splitting that same locker room, Ivan standing on the left side while Adonis and Viktor on the right. These shots have a few different meanings. Viktor and Adonis being on the same side represent that they are the new generation, while Ivan is from the older generation. This could also mean that Ivan's actions in 1985 is what caused the rivalry to form between the Dragos, Creeds, and a Balboa, though now the two sons are on the same side. In a slightly different context, this could also mean that Viktor was never an antagonist to begin with, as his actions were really because of Ivan ultimately pulling the strings along with Buddy Marcel. On another small note, we see Ivan switch to the protagonist side to comfort Viktor, as Rocky looks in on the same side of the room where Ivan and Rocky quietly make peace. Viktor even goes on to smile as the scene fades out after his father pats him on the neck. When both Viktor and Adonis train, their montages are parallels of each other in a few different ways. Viktor is training indoors with seemingly top-notch equipment supposedly in cold weather in either Ukraine or Moscow. Adonis is training outdoors in the hot weather in old-school traditional ways, supposedly out in Nevada. This also mirrors the training montage in Rocky 4, where Rocky trained out in the cold and in old-school traditional methods, while Ivan trained indoors with top-notch equipment. Similar to their father's rivalry back in 1985, Adonis is more outspoken while Viktor is quiet and says few words. Another callback is that Adonis has an extravagant entrance like Apollo did in the exhibition, while Viktor has a minimal entrance similar to Ivan simply waiting in the ring. Another parallel is Ivan would go on to shove Apollo during the press conference, while Adonis is shoved by Viktor for attempting to attack Ivan, though Ivan made a comment about Apollo in bad taste. The first fight is very similar in the fact that both Dragos would be very patient at first, not interested in going out onto the offensive until their coach or trainer tells them to do so, and the fight ending where Creed dies or is severely hurt. It also goes without saying, but both Creeds also wear the American flag trunks in these respective fights. In the second fight, Viktor is welcomed like a hero in Moscow, similar to his father held as a hero back in the USSR before his fight with Rocky. It's interesting to note that Viktor wears very similar colors that Rocky wore in his first fight against Apollo. This could be a nod to Viktor being similar to Rocky due to their working man backgrounds, as I mentioned before. Both fights were also notably championship ones, with an opponent who they would have at least 2 matches with. I'd also like to point out that Adonis wearing faded or blackened American flag trunks also adds to the duality theme of this fight. Whereas Viktor is wearing white trunks as he is seen as the hope and light of Russia, Adonis is seen as the enemy, though wearing black as he was reborn in the desert. Finally, the most important parallel or obvious one is where Rocky failed to throw in the towel to save Apollo's life, Ivan threw in the towel to save Viktor from Adonis. Ivan was willing to do what Rocky was not, save someone that was close to him and to not live with regret, effectively rewriting history. Let's talk about Viktor Drago's fighting style. Similar to his father, Viktor's fighting style is very rudimentary, but it's effective. Thanks to his enormous size, strength, and speed, likely learning due to his father's strict training regimen, the punches count when they are thrown, almost very calculated as we see in his first fight with Adonis. He is very patient and good at absorbing blows due to this conditioning as well. We also see some excellent counter punches from Drago in the first fight, as he's learned to bait his opponents in a similar manner to how Ivan baited Apollo in their fight. Another tactic he's learned from his father is trapping his opponents in the corner and against the ropes, effectively beating his opponent into submission. Viktor is very perceptive. He senses the weak point in Adonis' ribs and attacks it repeatedly in each fight. Despite his basic style, he's effective at throwing different combinations, notably focusing on right punches and right hooks. Despite all of these strengths, Viktor is not as inhuman as you might think. Like his father, he is susceptible to mind games. When Adonis proved he could go toe-to-toe with Viktor in the second fight, this seemed to shock Viktor and also make him angry, going so far as to almost disqualify himself again when Adonis was downed. Notably, because of his mother leaving mid-fight and him noticing this also took a mental toll on him, as he nearly lost his will to fight and couldn't properly defend himself, causing his father to throw in the towel. Coinciding with this, when Viktor starts to take punishment from Adonis, this also surprises him, even to the point when he realizes that he's cut, as no one has seemed to have inflicted him with any type of injury before. Although this is not necessarily proven in the fight itself, there is a hint at Viktor not having stamina to go into longer fights, as a commentator makes a note that Drago has never been in a fight going past the 4th round. While sometimes reluctant to do so, Viktor fights dirty. As mentioned before, he disqualified himself while Adonis was taking a knee, and also did somewhat of an illegal clinch in the second fight to damage Adonis' ribs again. Here are my final thoughts on Viktor Drago and what we can expect from him in the future. Viktor is a parallel of a path Adonis himself could have gone down if it wasn't for Marianne's love and affection to keep him on the right path. Because Viktor was raised in hate and revenge and lacked affection from a motherly figure, and presumably in some cases affection from his father as well, he solely had a goal to appease his father and bring the title back to Russia to restore a legacy to his own name. Creed 2 is one of my favorites of the Rocky franchise because, like Rocky 3 did with Apollo, the Dragos are humanized so well and are given some more fleshed out details that also make Rocky 4 seem like a different movie in some of its own ways. As I had talked about in a previous KenCast with Ken Cole, while Cobra Kai is notorious for doing much of the very same thing, we have to tip our hat to Creed as they were the first to do it well, and Cobra Kai may not have been as successful if it wasn't for the first Creed film. While I feel like Creed 2 nicely ties up the rivalry of the Balboa-Creed alliance and the Dragos, it's interesting to note that Floria Montuno, and apologies if I butchered that, I probably did, is slated to appear in Creed 3. His name appears in the trailer's credits, though the character itself is notably absent, perhaps for a good reason. Now this is pure speculation from me personally and not canon, but I would love to see perhaps Viktor and Adonis form a friendship similar to how Rocky and Apollo did in Rocky 3. If the deleted scene in the locker room is any indication of this or is made canon in Creed 3, perhaps Adonis' reassurance to Viktor being worth more than his name in a single fight, along with silently forgiving Ivan, would have another ally in his corner and could learn a thing or two from Viktor on how to bait opponents and develop raw punching power in order to combat Damien. Perhaps there would be another fight between them as well, but that would seem rather unlikely unless it was for training purposes. I couldn't see Viktor wanting revenge on Adonis after losing, given how he is now at peace with his father and with Adonis, as their rivalry wasn't developed from a directly personal confrontation between the two, obviously not counting what happened in 1985. Adonis fighting Ricky Conlan again makes sense, as Donnie lost only by a second in their first match, and I could see perhaps this even being somewhat of a friendly rematch between the two, as Adonis earned Ricky's respect. Seeing Adonis and Viktor training together would be an epic moment in the franchise, as history is now rewritten with both the Creeds and Dragos being at peace, but only time will tell what the future holds for Viktor Drago when Creed 3 comes out. Before I go, I want to give a quick shout out and thanks to my partners and affiliates. I now have official merchandise. Go to strifethewarrior.art or click on any of the merchandise below the comments section. I'm running a special for 15% off now until January 31st. Use coupon code HOLIDAYS at checkout. If you're needing to defend your internet from Viktor Drago's punching onslaught, go to nordvpn.com/strifethewarrior or use coupon code StrifeTheWarrior to get a NordVPN 2-year plan with a huge discount. You can use NordVPN to unlock Netflix and your favorite entertainment websites that are not available here in the US. You can connect up to 6 devices at the same time with one account. There's no data logging whatsoever, and it works even in China. NordVPN works with Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, and Android, has a Chrome extension which is very user-friendly, and unlimited bandwidth. If you're not happy with it for any reason, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. With 7 World Heavyweight Championships under its belt, it's no wonder why NordVPN is a winner. If you use this code, you also help directly support my channel. So go to nordvpn.com/StrifeTheWarrior or use coupon code StrifeTheWarrior at checkout. Last but not least, I'm sure I have a good majority of gamers here in the audience, but did you know you can grab some excellent games while supporting charities at the same time? If you haven't already, you should check out HumbleBundle. They've raised over $200 million in charity since 2010 and feature a different charity site-wide every month. If you see a bundle you like, you can pay for what you want and in return get computer programs, games, ebooks, etc. and the proceeds support charity. Go to HumbleBundle.com and use my referral link in the description at checkout. These referral links help support the channel, so thank you NordVPN and thank you HumbleBundle. Let me know what you guys think down below. Who is the true villain in Creed 2? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, subscribe, share it with your friends, and comment, as these all help my channel grow. Be sure to check out and subscribe to my second gaming channel. I'm trying to get this channel to 1,000 subscribers, and supporting this channel also helps me support my main channel. I'll be uploading more clips to this gaming channel, so stay tuned for that. Keep up with me on my socials via Instagram and Twitter. Shout out to my YouTube members, I appreciate the support. If you'd like to directly support the channel, consider becoming a member and enjoy perks such as VIP channels, access in Discord, preview videos before release, 15% off of merch, members only live streams and chats, and more, all for only 99 cents. Thanks for watching, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we'll catch you around next time.